Inside a high-security prison near Paris, concrete walls rise in layered rings, topped with razor wire and watched by armed patrols. Guards move with routine precision. Isolation cells cut off contact, and the atmosphere is measured and controlled. This is the most fortified place in France, built to contain the most dangerous minds. Deep inside, one prisoner draws relentless surveillance, Redoine Faid. Born to Algerian immigrants and raised in the banlieue, he first stole to survive. He watched crime films that would shape his imagination, and he moved from small thefts to armed robberies and hostage situations. Films did more than inspire. They became a manual, a model for disguises, timing, and methods that escalated into violence. Outside the prison, a suburban flight instructor begins what looks like an ordinary morning. He follows his checklist, unaware that a network of accomplices is already setting the stage, planning to use a helicopter, intimidation, and the prison's own security failures to make contact. Guards keep their routine, believing the walls and protocols are enough to hold him. What chain of decisions took an impoverished boy from the banlieue to the center of one of the most audacious prison breaks in modern French history? Creil, on the northern edge of Paris, offered little comfort to families like the Faids. In a cramped apartment, sometimes with as many as 8 people sharing 3 rooms, Redoine learned early that space and money were always tight. His father, a factory worker when jobs could be found, struggled to keep the family afloat. The neighborhood's concrete towers and aging lifts stood as reminders that opportunity rarely came knocking here. By his early teens, Redoine had already felt the weight of expectation and hunger. At 13, he slipped bread and canned goods into his jacket at the local market, hoping to avoid the watchful eyes of shopkeepers. The first time he made it home without incident. But police records from 1985 show a different story soon after. A juvenile report for shoplifting, the first of many. The court filings from Creil detail a pattern. Small thefts, petty burglaries, each offense explained away as a necessity. Poverty did more than empty the fridge. It shaped the rules of survival. The local youth, many from immigrant families, learned quickly that the line between need and crime was thin. For Redoine, the police station became a familiar stop, and the threat of juvenile detention loomed. Inside those centers, he met older boys who spoke in code about bigger scores, about how to move quietly and disappear fast. The lessons stuck. By 16, the boundaries between right and wrong had blurred, replaced by a code drawn from his surroundings and reinforced by every successful theft. In the evenings, the family television flickered with scenes of masked men and fast cars, images that would soon leave their mark. In the Faid household, the television became more than a distraction from daily hardship. Stacks of worn VHS tapes lined the shelves, crime classics, American thrillers, and French heist films. Titles like Heat, Point Break, and Redoine played on repeat, their scenes dissected and replayed late into the night. Redoine didn't just watch, he studied. He filled cheap notebooks with diagrams and timelines, copying the choreography of armored truck ambushes and the split-second timing of cinematic getaways. Police inventories from later raids would list these journals in detail. Crude floor plans sketched in blue ink, annotated stills from Michael Mann's shootouts, and pages marked with phrases like smoke cover, man film, or escape route, multiple cars. Faid's fascination with film was methodical. He cataloged disguises, mapped out timing for diversions, and practiced dialogue drawn from his favorite scripts. Court testimony and his own autobiography would later confirm that he treated these movies as a library of tactics, a kind of blueprint for real-world operations. In interviews, he admitted replaying Heat dozens of times, searching for the perfect rhythm between chaos and control. His notebooks mirrored the structure of the films, lists of equipment, roles for each crew member, and contingency plans for police response. By his late teens, the line between fiction and reality had blurred. The language of cinema became the language of crime. Every plan started with a scene from a film, then evolved into a checklist for the next job. The groundwork was set. The tactics were rehearsed. The next step would move from the living room to the street. Masks were pulled tight, gloves snapped on, and the crew moved with practiced precision. In the spring of 1992, a branch of the Banque Populaire in the Paris suburbs became the stage for a robbery that seemed choreographed for the cameras. Witness accounts and police reports describe a team entering at opening time, each member assigned a role down to the second. Smoke canisters hissed across the marble floor, filling the lobby with a dense white cloud that sent customers scrambling for cover. Within the confusion, the crew's leader, his voice disguised by a cheap walkie-talkie, issued commands as if reading from a film script. Disguises ranged from postal uniforms to delivery jumpsuits, purchased or stolen in advance, then carefully cataloged and reused. Police inventories from later raids list latex masks, wigs, and even a full set of fake badges. The crew's movements followed planned patterns mapped out in Faid's notebooks. Entry timed for shift changes. Vault access within 3 minutes. Exit routes cleared by lookouts stationed along the block. No shots fired, no alarms tripped. The entire operation lasted less than 5 minutes, and by the time the smoke cleared, the robbers had vanished, leaving behind only scattered bills and stunned silence. Investigators noted the use of diversions and misdirection, tactics rarely seen outside of fiction. It was a robbery designed for spectacle, meant to confuse, overwhelm, and disappear. With each success, the crew's confidence grew, and so did the scale of their ambitions. The line between performance and crime was gone. The next jobs would be bigger, riskier, and even more elaborate. On the evening of May 25, 2010, an armored Loomis truck rolled through Villiers-sur-Marne, its route mapped and timed by Redoine Faid's crew. The plan was methodical: to block the road, strike fast, and vanish before police could respond. But as the convoy slowed at a traffic circle, a patrol car approached. Within seconds, the quiet suburban street erupted into chaos. More than 500 rounds tore through the air. Witnesses later described the sound as deafening, punctuated by the shouts of officers scrambling for cover. In the crossfire, Officer Aurélie Fouquet, 26 years old, took position to shield civilians caught in the line of fire. Forensic ballistics from the scene would later show she was struck by 11 bullets. She died before paramedics could reach her. The aftermath left bullet-riddled vehicles and shell casings scattered across the asphalt. Emergency crews moved quickly, but the damage was done. Courtroom testimony from Fouquet's family, read during the trial, spoke of a young mother lost and a child left behind. Those words became an irreversible loss, and they echoed through the press. This was no longer a story of cinematic robberies or masked men vanishing into the night. The death of Officer Fouquet transformed public perception overnight. Headlines across France named Faid not just as a robber, but as a cop killer. The legal consequences were severe, and the human cost impossible to measure. For many, the spectacle of the heist faded, replaced by grief and outrage that would follow Faid for the rest of his life. Inside Redoine prison, security measures were supposed to be air-tight. High concrete walls ringed the compound. Guards paced watchtowers, and isolation cells kept inmates separated from one another. The atmosphere was controlled, routine, and contained a low, constant tension. Yet over several months, tools made their way past layers of screening. The angle grinder, essential for cutting through reinforced doors, arrived hidden in pieces, likely passed through visitor channels or concealed in everyday deliveries. Smoke canisters were stashed the same way, waiting for the right moment. Staff had flagged concerns about visitor checks and unusual deliveries, but those concerns never prompted tighter controls. Drones began appearing above the prison's main courtyard, and their flights were traced in incident logs by the deputy director. Each overflight lingered over the only section of the yard not covered by anti-helicopter netting. No action was taken, and the pattern went unchallenged. By the time authorities realized the significance, every asset needed for a coordinated escape, including tools, smoke, and a mapped aerial route, was already in place, hidden in plain sight. The whine of rotors cut through the prison's Sunday quiet as the Alouette 2 dropped into the courtyard, threading the one exposed gap in the anti-helicopter netting. 3 figures in black spilled from the cabin. Smoke canisters rolled across the concrete, masking their movements as alarms failed to trigger in time. Within seconds, the angle grinder's teeth bit into the metal doors of the visiting room. Sparks showered the floor. Inside, guards retreated, unarmed and disoriented. The pilot, hands shaking, kept the engine running under orders and the threat of automatic weapons. Faid appeared in the haze, hustled by his crew, faces hidden behind balaclavas. The extraction took less than 3 minutes. As the helicopter lifted off, smoke still drifting, a handful of stunned staff watched from behind locked doors. 60 kilometers away, the aircraft was set ablaze, its mission complete before noon. Today, Redoine Faid remains sealed behind reinforced doors, his story a warning embedded in prison blueprints across France. As security evolves, the line between cinematic fantasy and real-world violence grows thinner. The true cost is paid by victims, not legends. What boundaries will we redraw next?